First and foremost, once she gets a drink of water, Liz, as you know, has probably most famously published Women of the Irish Revolution, which I very happily received as a present some years ago, and I think it's one of the best publications in the whole centenary period. And I'm told she's currently working on a publication on the rebel liberties, which we look forward to. So, Curt Fáilte of Liz Gillis.
And just like to say thanks to the Lord Mayor for asking me, inviting me to talk on this day, a very, very special event. I suppose the event that I'm talking about today is one that actually has been airbrushed out of history, hasn't really been talked about since 1918, and this is Lá na Mán, which is a hugely important event in terms of the whole Anti-Conscription Campaign. In terms of the actual national pledge that was taken in April, women did sign that along with men all across the country. But the campaign wasn't just a thing that was going to happen for 1 week. It's a drawn out campaign, and this will last as long as the threat of conscription is there. So the women of Ireland were determined to play their part, and they decided that they would actually have their own day. Now, women from the Irish Women's Workers' Union, the IWFL, Cumann na Mán, Trade Union, the Drapers Association and so on, all of these women got together to put forward their strategy and what they would do. And like the previous campaign in April, the National Pledge, the Women's Day actually brought across our women from all sections of society together. But you had to get the women out, and it was decided that St. Colum's Kill's Day was the day that the women would come out. And so they actually put advertisements in the newspapers, and posters were put up all over the place. And it wasn't just in Dublin, this was going to be a countrywide event, and the women responded across the country. So you have an example here of one of the posters that was put up. And where the women would actually take their pledge depended on the location. In Dublin it would take place in City Hall, but you have in town halls around the country, churches around the country, anywhere that there was available space, they would actually take this pledge. And as you can see, it is on the 9th of June 1918. So again, just going back to the newspaper reports or the advertisements that were placed in. So the date is set 9th of June, but you have to actually coordinate the event because it would just be chaos if every woman in Dublin just descended on City Hall. So the announcement there on your right, you can see that it's a list of the organisations, and so Cumann na Mán, the Women's Workers' Union and so on, they actually would take it in turns. So Cumann na Mán arrived first at City Hall, they're followed then by the Women's Workers' Union, and that continues from roughly 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock throughout the day. And then you have women then, just women who are not a part of any society, who are not a member of any political group, that they can then go to City Hall after the organisations themselves have gone, and they will then sign the pledge. And in cases in relation to around the Dublin 8 area, as the Lord Mayor's mentioned, the Liberties, I am focused on that and from there, and I've discovered information that the women from the Dublin 8 area, they start off in Inchicore, they meet at the church there, they sign the pledge there, they march down with their list down James Street, meet another contingent of women there, they have their list in hand, they march down to Thomas Street, meet the women from St. Catherine's area in Liberties Meath Street, and then they march down to City Hall, and then they go in and basically hand over the list of signatures there. And this is repeated all over the country. And here you have this amazing photograph. This is the only photograph I've been able to actually find in the newspapers, but this is a group of women actually marching to City Hall. It's estimated on the first day that over 16,000 women signed a pledge in Dublin alone. You have 300 women signing in Bray, there is over 900 women that sign in Kilkenny. Again, you've got Ballina, Donegal, Cork, everywhere, all the women do come out, but this photograph is so valuable to have because it's actual pictorial record of the women of Ireland coming out to sign this pledge. And basically how, I have to explain what pricked my attention, or what brought my attention to this, were women like Josie O'Keefe and Annie Cooney, later Annie O'Brien. And it was when I was writing the book, the 77 women's book, the women that were imprisoned after the Easter Rising, thankfully their pensions had been released, and literally in many of them you just see, and you can see it there, the example, it's a one line, that is all, took part in Lawn and Mon, or was a steward at City Hall. But the women actually put this in, and that is how I was actually brought to the attention of Lawn and Mon, because it has been quite literally forgotten, and it's such an important event. So thanks to these women, we were then able to investigate further, and thanks to the newspapers at the time reporting, we were able to then discover all about this story, not just in Dublin, but also across the country. And it is very significant to know that the Women's Pledge was very different to the actual National Pledge, and whereas the National Pledge said that they would resist conscription by all means by all means possible, the Women's Pledge is very, very specific. Now you might be able to read it there, so I hope you don't mind if I will read it. And what the Women's Pledge said was that because the enforcement of conscription on any people without their consent is tyranny, we are resolved to resist the conscription of Irish men. We will not fill the places of men deprived of their work to refuse and enforce military service. We will do all in our power to help the families of men who suffer to refuse and enforce military service. So this is the women of Ireland standing up to the British government and saying, you may take our men from our workforce, but you will not have a workforce, and the country will come to a standstill, just like the general strike had done so in April. So it's a very different pledge that the women did sign. And in reflecting back on what was said in the previous panel, as in what Kieran was saying about where are these lists, a lot of them were just, these lists were put in notebooks, and they're probably hidden in attics, some were probably mislaid or so on. I have been able to locate one down at the Kenny, and the Kenny Archaeological Society have it, and on the front of this book you have 925 signatures of women from Kilkenny who signed that pledge. It was later used as a receipt book for a dairy, so that's how much importance was put onto this. However, the dairy was owned by the Stallard family, and Josie Stallard was actually the intelligence agent belonging to Cathal Brugha. She was his agent. So they were a Republican family, so thankfully it is still in existence and it can now be viewed. But that is a snippet of social history there. You have women who are politicised, women who are active, alongside women who just want to have their say and play their role in this hugely important event in Irish history. Again, the newspaper reports do follow the events of what happened, and you have great accounts of how the day actually went, and it was a terrible day in terms of the weather, and as we've known, as we have experienced in the last couple of months, we've had brutal weather, and on the 9th of June the heavens opened and the women were lashed on by the rain. It didn't stop them, and the newspaper reporters actually write that in their accounts, that despite the fact that the women were soaked to the skin, they just continued on and did their bit. This piece in the middle, the little segment, the advertisement there, although you signed your name in a ledger or on a sheet of paper, you could then actually get your own copy, a fancy copy of the pledge. And as it states there, the postage was free, you had to buy it, but you could either get it in English or in Irish. I've been very, very lucky that thanks to Deirdre Colgan, whose Aunt Kitty Colgan was a member of Cumann Mon, we have actually been able to get our hands on her copy of the pledge. And again, just to these accounts reflect on how successful the day was, again, despite the weather. And not everyone could sign the pledge on the 9th of June. City Hall in Dublin was kept open for the whole week, and between 10 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening, women could sign it, and they continued to sign it. And it's estimated that in all, about 40,000 women signed this pledge in Dublin. What is interesting as well to know is that in March you did have proclamations issued by the Commander-in-Chief of the Crown Forces and the authorities in Ireland, issuing proclamations that you could not have meetings without prior consent from the authorities. But the proclamation that's issued in March, there was a time frame on that. 2 days after the women have their event, on the 11th of June, this proclamation is issued. And the difference with this one is that there is no time frame. Basically, the proclamation is there that if you want to have a public gathering, you will have to get prior consent from the authorities, and that will remain in place until they decide when that will be lifted. That happens after the women have their event on Lawn Amon. And this has a direct result or a direct impact on the women later on, because another aspect of the conscription campaign was the German plot arrests, the British response to what was going on, where you have practically all the leadership of Sinn Féin and many others arrested, including a number of women. And the women are coming on, and the IWFL, including Hannah Shee's, Skeffton and so on, they come out and they protest at the imprisonment of women like Kathleen Clark and Countess Markovich. And at one meeting in particular in Foster Place, the women are battered by the police. So you can see the direct impact of a proclamation like that it has on the women. And I suppose just to basically finish off, Lawn Amon is such a significant event in the whole life of this campaign. Basically, this is the women of Ireland standing up to the British government and saying, no, you are not going to conscript one Irishman, and if you are, this is what we are going to do. And although women over 30 had been given the right to vote in 1918, many women who signed that pledge did not have the right to vote. This was those women actually using their name, putting their name to a pledge to basically do their bit and save a generation of Irishmen. And the government had to take note, the government had to listen, and the women were sternly determined to play their part in this campaign, and they certainly did. Thank you so much.
Well, made a way.